And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. You know that things are about to get really bad for you if people like Tom Lubnow are coming to your defense. Let's just be honest. When Tom Lubnow comes to your defense, I mean, things are pretty desperate. When you have a former Redcoat Speaker of the House from Gillette, who really shouldn't be even included in the same sentence as the word conservative, comes running to your side, you have a lot to worry about. Of course, I'm referring to yesterday's edition of the podcast, which I have to tell you, for a replay, that thing got a heck of a lot of response. And all of it boils down to the Weston County clerk and just completely screwing up the entire election in 2024. She's now ignored a legislative subpoena, which, you know, I asked around a little bit yesterday. I don't know that this has ever happened before. First, that a legislative committee actually subpoenaed a witness, which, of course, the Management Audit Committee and the Wyoming Legislature subpoenaed a whole bunch of different counties earlier this year. So the subpoena part of it, that's not new. But what is new is somebody ignoring a subpoena, which, as Tom Lubnow in the pages of the the Cowboy State Daily, rightly points out, is not a very good idea. Not because it looks terrible, but because it might deliver to you a brand new pair of shiny handcuffs, as it rightly should. So that's going to be the top story today. And then, of course, we've got to talk about this shutdown business. What's true, what's not true, what you can expect, and, what's really, and really who's to blame. Chuck Schumer was on the floor of the Senate claiming that the New York Times is biased against Democrats. It's absolutely hilarious. I've got a great piece of audio from you. And the Democrats are pretty well caught. And, you know, this is an unfamiliar territory for them because usually they're able to use any sort of wiggle room that they can find to slip out of whatever it is that they've done. It's, it's a particular skill of dishonest people. I mean, if you're willing to lie about just about anything, then there's a whole host of things that you could do to get out of just about every argument. However, they're dealing with a president that has pretty much had everything humanly possible done to him, legally speaking anyway, and he knows how to play the game, and he's had, 4 long years to think about all the mistakes that he made. And so the Democrats have, they've pretty much played right into his hands. So we're going to talk about that. And then, in my opinion, my friends, this may be the best government shutdown ever. Of course, we should all argue that any government shutdown is a good thing. Oh, I know. There are some people that are not going to get their paychecks. And this is really one of the crappy parts about a government shutdown is it just proves to you that the Democrats really don't give two craps about our troops, because our troops are not going to get a paycheck so long as the shutdown continues. Now, I do have a friend who just recently got back from Jordan with the Wyoming 115th Field Artillery Unit. She just got back last Friday, I think, which is what this is. When she came back, she surprised me with what I think is an incredible gift. I sent her with one of the amazing Cowboy State Politics hats, and just said, "Hey, man, when you're out doing, your PT or you're out working out or whatever, here's a hat, something from home to wear." And I just expected that it was just going to be, I may get a cool picture of her wearing one of my hats when she's over in the Middle East. But what I got was the hat returned to me with signed by the entire 115th Field Artillery Unit. So I think it's pretty cool. That's what that is. Anyway, I was talking to her yesterday, and she said that she did receive her paycheck, this time around, but probably, depending on how long the shutdown happens, won't see the next one. However, even she pointed out that whenever the shutdown ends, all the necessary, or what do they call them, essential government employees will receive all of their back pay all at once. So it's not like you're really out of a paycheck, unless, of course, that you are one of those people who are in a non-essential department of government, and you might be fired. We'll get to that story a little bit later on, too. And as it turns out, most Americans are absolutely in favor of deportations. Yeah, getting rid of the illegal aliens that are in our communities. And let's not make any bones about this, my friends, that every state is a border state now. Even the great state of Wyoming, just about every community has been impacted by illegal immigration in one form or another. I mean, here in Sheridan, Wyoming, and I mean, we're talking, okay, so Sheridan is closer to the, to the northern border than the southern border, and right along I-90, so it's a major corridor going up through the reservation. So, I mean, yeah, there is some trafficking going on, but it's not infrequent that you'll see in the police blotter, the rolling log, as it were, that you'll see illegal immigrants caught for a variety of offenses. The one that sticks out in my head is there was a rash of ATMs that were burglarized. It's a few months ago, but illegal aliens that are doing it, and I mean, even in small communities, Americans are just sick and tired of the lawlessness. And I think it's not as much illegal immigration. It's that we're not prosecuting criminals, that we're living in a time when the country is just lawless, that there are people in positions of power that commit crimes, and they know that they're not going to get prosecuted. And that is where we're going to start today's program. Now, if you haven't listened to the podcast yet, go back and listen to it. This one is entitled, "They Need a New Clerk." But most of it is a replay of an episode that I published last November, and it's about this about the Weston County clerk absolutely messing up the 2024 election. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but let me just give you the high points, so we're all on the same page. So before the 2024 election, Becky Hadlock, who is the Weston County, Wyoming clerk, ordered some ballots that were incorrect. And she didn't tell anybody. In fact, what she did was continue to use those incorrect ballots. And the best I can figure, and this is just me having interviewed her, I think she just mixed them all together and thought, well, nobody's really going to notice. So it turns out a lot of people noticed, because there was 1,289 undervotes in an election that had a grand total of around 1,400 votes. So 1,289 undervotes. And she didn't even think that was really a problem. And then she looked at her school board race, it had 5,000 undervotes. And the county commissioner's race, it had a couple of thousand undervotes too. But Becky Hadlock, no, there's no problem here. In fact, the legislative race, she claimed that it was a protest vote against Representative Chip Nyman, Speaker of the House, Chip Nyman. So when he questioned Becky Hadlock about it, she's like, well, it's a protest vote, Chip. I don't know if that conversation ever happened. But it was caught the night of the election by the Wyoming Secretary of State. Now, he tried to call Becky Hadlock at work, and unfortunately for him, she had already gone to bed. And I mean, you can't, honestly, my friends, you can't make this stuff up. But anyway, so Chuck Gray, the Secretary of State, calls the Weston County Sheriff. He goes over to Becky Hadlock's house, rouses her out of bed, and asks, hey, what's up with all these election results? And she says, oh, no, those are right. Well, the next day, she was interviewed by the Newsletter Journal, the local paper there in Newcastle, and she told them a story. And then I called her. It wasn't that long after, and she told me an entirely different version of events. And then when she was questioned by the Secretary of State, I mean, the trouble with lying is you forget which stories you've told to which person. So in that episode that I published yesterday is the interview with Becky Hadlock. That one's fascinating. There's also the interview that she did with the Newsletter Journal, and you'll notice when you listen to it that there are two versions of events that are not exactly the same. And then I have a full interview with the Weston County GOP chair, Carrie Drost. And that one's fascinating because she was right in the middle of all of this. Because, of course, in Wyoming, when there's a problem with an election or there are questions or whatever, the county clerk calls the Democrat chair and the Republican chair to make sure that everything's being done above board. So Carrie Drost was right in the middle of this whole thing, and there's a great interview with her. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, go back and listen to it. I think that it's really good. But the newest person to come to the defense of Becky Hadlock, the really terrible Weston County clerk, is Tom Lubnow, columnist for the Cowboy, the Cowboy State Daily. And he says in his piece that the Becky Hadlock saga just got worse. And let me just read you the first opening paragraphs here. And I quote, in July, the Management Audit Committee of the Wyoming Legislature issued a subpoena to Weston County Clerk Becky Hadlock to appear in front of the committee and explain why she made a mistake in certifying the election results. Okay, so first of all, that's so close to a bald-faced lie, it's not even funny. So that was not the only problem. Yes, she certified results that were incorrect. It's obvious that she didn't test the machines, and here's why we know that. Because the incorrect ballots showed a blank spot where, okay, let me back up here. So she didn't test the machine because it was reading a spot on the ballot that didn't have any markings in it. And so when the machine read that, it automatically, in every case when one of those ballots was used, registered an undervote. An undervote happens when you don't fill out a portion of the ballot. Or, let's say the ballot says pick 3 candidates and you only pick 2. Well, that's also an undervote. But in the legislative race, there was only one person running, and that was Chip Nyman. And so what happened is those ballots that were incorrect, the machine was reading a spot where there wasn't anything printed on the ballot. So it's obvious that she didn't test the machines ahead of time. So that's strike number 2. And then ignoring the subpoena, that's strike number 3. Continuing on with Tom Lubnow's pile of bullcrap. Quote, as the column detailed in July, Hadlock's conduct had in wrongfully certifying the election results had been investigated 3 times. Hadlock had provided the wrong version of ballots to several polling places. That's the incorrect ballots that I just mentioned. When undervotes were discovered, the office was indifferent to investigating the errors. In fact, she claimed that it was a protest vote. Hadlock was investigated by the Weston County Attorney Michael Stulkin and the Attorney General's office and Governor Mark Gordon. All reached the same conclusion, that Hadlock showed extreme indifference but should not be removed from office. It's the governor who has the ability to remove her from office. In a flourish of performance art, the Management Audit Committee issued a subpoena commanding Hadlock to appear in front of the committee in Casper and give testimony about the election mistake and the failure to catch it. Hadlock ignored the subpoena. She did not show up for Monday's meeting. She informed the lawmakers via a letter that she would not come to their tar and feathering because she had a prior commitment. It doesn't really matter. It's a legal subpoena, and it doesn't matter if she had a scheduling conflict or whatever. Now, what Tom Lubnow leaves out is in her letter, she says that she sent 2 people who are fully qualified to testify on her behalf. The only issue with that is when those 2 people actually showed up at the legislative committee, neither of them, or at least one of them, excuse me, I shouldn't say neither, one of them, Ann Schlegel, said she wasn't even told that she was supposed to testify on Hadlock's behalf. And so, I mean, the lies coming from Becky Hadlock just continue to compound. And that's the problem with being a redcoat politician, is that you tell so many lies that it's hard to figure out which ones you've told to whom. And eventually you just get caught up in them. But regardless, she's ignored a subpoena, and the committee is going to prosecute her for it. And according to Tom Lubnow, who is an attorney, now I've been told he's pretty good at his job, though I have no personal experience. But he says, quote, "The question here would have been whether attendance at a politically motivated tribunal," of course, pay attention to the loaded language that he uses in his piece, because what he's trying to do is convince you that this legislative committee is not legitimate, that he calls it a tar and feathering, a tribunal. There's another pejorative that he uses later on in the piece. But the whole point here is he's trying to say, hey, no big deal. Don't worry about this. This is not that big of an issue. But even he has to admit that this was probably not a good idea. Here's what he says. The legislature cannot prosecute Hadlock. Only an executive branch prosecutor can. It is within the executive branch prosecutor's discretion as to whether to prosecute, ignoring the subpoena or not. Let's see here. Where was it? Well, anyway, in the piece, he says that ignoring the subpoena is probably not a good idea, valid or not. Here we go. Here it is. Quote, "Ignoring a subpoena is not the right approach. The correct approach for questioning a subpoena is to move to quash it, and have a judge decide whether the subpoena is valid or not." Let's see here. But here we go. But simply ignoring it is a really bad idea. Not only because it subjects you to criminal penalties, but it doesn't really help your case at all. If you were trying to plead for your innocence and you really didn't think that you did anything wrong and all of your actions were above board, then why not show up at a committee that you've been subpoenaed to attend? Well, the reason why she's not showing up is she thinks probably that that's the only card that she has left to play. And I'm sure that that's the case. Well, anyway, it's going to continue. But there is another layer of this. We are told by redcoat leftist Republicans in Wyoming, and it's kind of funny. So it's a short digression. I was on a call this morning with a number of people talking about similar issues. And I made the comment, hey, you know what? We have Democrats in Wyoming. It's true. But most of them are hiding in the Republican Party. And I got quite a chuckle out of the group on that one. But it's true. Most of the Democrats in Wyoming have realized that it's really hard to get elected, being honest about who you are. And so they hide out in the Republican Party. But if you have somebody like Tom Lubnow admitting that you kind of made a mistake by not showing up to this committee, you know that the water is probably a heck of a lot deeper than it was a few days ago. So we'll wait to see what happens with this legislative committee. And I'm going to reach out to a member of the committee, probably try to talk to Representative Rachel and see if we can get her on the phone, Rachel Rodriguez Williams, and maybe get a firsthand view into what happened here. But I'll let you know when that's going to happen. By the way, a quick program note before I continue with the program. I know I said we were going to release the app yesterday. However, I'm going to need a little bit more time getting it all ship-shape and Bristol fashion. And so the expected release date for the Open Range Record app is going to be October 15th. And the reason it's put so far out is I, of course, have to go see if I can go kill an elk. It's a yearly thing that we do in our family. We go up to the cabin, me and the old man, and we see if we can shoot an elk. And where our cabin's at, man, if the elk come right through there, it's just a matter of being there at the right time. So that's one of the reasons why I'm going to push the release date out to October 15th. And I need some time to test it. But if you haven't been watching the program, let me just give you the nuts and bolts of what this app is. I realized a long time ago that there are just some people, for whatever reason, I can't imagine why, won't listen to a podcast. They just, for whatever reason, they just can't bring themselves to sit down and listen to the most explosive news and commentary in the state of Wyoming. And so I had to come up with a way to reach that constituency, reach those people. So I have been spending an enormous amount of time developing a mobile app. And I'm going to call it the Open Range Record, kind of an homage to, Western culture, open range. And it's the main purpose is news on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. And so we're going to have a lot of contributors. I've already got several lined up. And the whole point is it is so hard. And if you ever want to know how difficult it is to get people to just write straight news, try to make your own news app. You'll figure it out that while people have no problem giving you their opinion, getting them to actually write straight news stories is really, really difficult, which is part of the, and I'm extraordinarily grateful to those people who said they want to contribute. I think that's incredible. But it really speaks to where we're at in our culture, that most of the information that you take in is not news. It's opinion, including this show. And that's why I'm really careful when I'm doing actual like investigative journalism, that I tell you, all right, so this is what happened. Here are the sources. Here's all the research. By the way, go to the website. I usually post all of the articles there. Sometimes even when I'm going through a show and there's an interesting article, I'll post it at cowboystatepolitics.com. But where we're at, my friends, is almost all of the network TV stations, including Fox News, including Real American News, One American News, all of the Newsmax, most of what you get is opinion. It's not news. And frankly, I don't think that it's possible to publish any sort of writing or a podcast or anything that is completely devoid of opinion. The goal is to try, right? To try to say, here's the bill, here's the committee it went through, here's the vote, this person said this person said this. Now, it used to be in journalism, and I'm talking like years ago, where you'd read a piece and down at the bottom there'd be a paragraph and say, this is this reporter's opinion. So everything that preceded it, okay, those ostensibly those are just facts. And then there's the reporter's opinion. I want to try to get back to that. I don't know if it's possible, but I've created a mobile app, and it's awesome. By the way, I think it's awesome, but it's going to be released on October 15th. It's the Open Range Record. Get excited about it. I'm thrilled, and it's going to be a major tool during the legislative session. So that'll be October 15th. Sorry for the delay, but you'll thank me later. Moving on, top of the news with just about every news outlet, including this one, is the government shutdown. And, if you listen to politicians, you'll think that a government shutdown means nothing's happening with the federal government. That's not entirely true. The federal government really never shuts down. However, there are some pieces of it that do. The non-essential services, all of the, myriad of alphabet soup agencies that aren't considered essential. And it's interesting that the military, their paychecks end up being in that group. I mean, they're absolutely essential. It's a crime that we're not. It's a crime that we're not making sure that they get paid. But I think a sober discussion of what exactly a government shutdown is, and this is from Fox News, and it says, here's what Trump wants to do to reshape the federal government during the shutdown. And this will give you an idea of what's really happening. And I think in the stack of stuff, let's see here. Maybe I've got it. Maybe it's down in there. Anyway, I've got a piece from Chris Bedford of The Blaze where he goes through, here's what the shutdown means. But one big item is that it gives the executive branch broad authority to make changes to a lot of executive branch agencies. And so here's just some of them. So the president says that the shutdown allows the administration to cut vast numbers of people and programs. And if you were watching Fox News or any of them yesterday, over 100,000 federal workers resigned yesterday. 100,000 people just say, yeah, I think we're done, which tells you the largesse of our government, how incredibly big it is. But here's what the piece says from Fox News, quote, the federal government partially shut down early Wednesday after Democrats and Republicans failed to reach an agreement on a funding package. In the lead up to the midnight deadline to pass a budget package, President Donald Trump warned the administration could make irreversible changes to the federal workforce. I hope so. Most notably through a wave of fresh layoffs. The president has underscored that he and his allies did not want the government to shut down, but that when it did, it opened the door for some good that could come out. That could come out of it. Senate lawmakers failed to reach a spending agreement in time for the end of the fiscal year on Tuesday, after the short-term extension of the fiscal year 2025 funding, aimed at keeping the government open through November 21st. Now, just be honest about that. That is the same continuing resolution that Democrats have voted on, by my count, 4 different times. It is the exact same thing. 4 times they've voted for the same resolution. And basically what it did is it kept funding levels where they're at right now, and continued that through November 21st. But of course, the Democrats, and we're going to get into this a little bit later on. Well, you know what? Actually, we can do that in this segment. But they didn't want to do that because they wanted funding to return to things like PBS and NPR and USAID. And they wanted to continue funding healthcare for illegal aliens. If you want some proof of that, here is a, let's see. Nope, that's not it. Yeah, by the way, Agent 29, our illustrious producer, is off gallivanting around. So that's why we're kind of flying solo this week. But here is, let's see here. Where's it at? That's Vance. Okay, here's Maxine Waters admitting to, and listen careful to what she says, admitting to why the Democrats shut the government down. Check this out.
But aren't Democrats demanding health care for illegal aliens?
Democrats are demanding health care for everybody.
All right, everybody, which would necessarily include illegal aliens. From the piece, Democrats expressed frustration at being shut out of spending negotiations and over the GOP bill's exclusion of enhanced Obamacare subsidies that were first enacted in 2021 under President Joe Biden. Those subsidies, a COVID-19 era measure, are set to lapse at the end of 2025 unless Congress takes action. Republicans have since pinned the shutdown blame on Democrats, arguing they refuse to fund the budget as an attempt to reinstate taxpayer-funded medical benefits for illegal immigrants through the Democrat lawmakers' continuing resolution, which would include extending those expiring Obamacare tax credits. Democrat leadership have balked at the claims, throwing their own jabs at Trump and Republican lawmakers as the culprits behind the shutdown and squashing claims that they want to provide health care to illegal immigrants. Quote, they say that undocumented people are set to get these credits. Senate Minority Leader Chuck U. Schumer said Tuesday, this is absolutely false. This is one of the big lies that they'll tell, except you just heard Maxine Waters say that's what they're going for. Now, Trump said during various public remarks on Tuesday, as the countdown to the midnight deadline dwindled, that though he did not want a shutdown, it presents him with an opportunity for the administration to carry out layoffs as part of the continued mission to slim down the federal government and snuff out overspending and fraud. Quote, we don't want it shut down because we don't want it to shut down because we have the greatest period of time ever, Trump said from the Oval Office. I tell you, we have $17 trillion being invested. So the last person that wants it to shut down is us. Now, with that being said, we can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible, that are bad for them, that are irreversible by them, like cutting vast numbers of people out, cutting things that they like, cutting programs that he liked, he continued. Now, a shutdown does not hand the president new powers, but instead concentrates discretion to the White House and the Office of Management and Budget over the executive branch, over what the executive branch continues operating or ending. Under the Anti-Deficiency Act, a federal law that guides the government through shutdowns, federal agencies are not permitted to spend funds. The Government Accountability Office outlines, except for a limited set of missions, such as performing constitutional duties. The executive branch is charged with interpreting those exceptions. According to the OMB director, Russell Vought, become very popular recently because he can trim the budget to a level that you couldn't do any other way, Trump continued. So they're taking a risk by having this shutdown, because other shutdown, we can do things medically and other ways, including benefits, and we can cut large numbers of people. Later that day, Trump again said that he didn't want the shutdown to unfold, but there's a lot of good that can come out of it in order to weed out government overspending. The truth is, my friends, that our government is so huge that there are duplicative programs everywhere. There's a whole bunch of programs that are completely outside of the role of government. And if you ask one of these Democrats, tell me why that's the proper role of government, they can't answer the question. And if you want any proof of that, go to the interview that I did with Democrats Mike Yin and Carly Provenza. I published it sometime last week. But I asked them over and over and over, explain to me why that is the proper role of government. Explain it to me. And they would continue to go around the question and not answer it. And the reason for that is they don't have an answer, because they know that it isn't part of the role of government. And that's true with a lot of departments in the federal government, the Department of Education being one of them. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the federal government has to provide education. It's not in there, my friends. And, that's one of the places where the government could start cutting big time, and I really wish they would. Well, let's see here. We're at our first break, so let's go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, I've got some news about a pipe bomb. You remember the pipe bombs during January 6th that nobody knew where they came from? Well, I've got a couple updates on that. Turns out there's a little bit of evidence missing. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism, coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. I'm your host, David, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. It's true, my friends. You can look it up, and it's a record that the mainstream media, they don't even have any hope of getting anywhere close to it. I wish they would try. I wish they would make an attempt to tell you the truth, but as we all know, that's not their goal. Their goal is to indoctrinate you and to get you to vote for liberal Republicans and Democrats. And, that's what they do. All you got to do is take a look at any of the Wyoming media, and if you try to read it critically, you'll find out that almost all of them are entirely biased. That's why we have Cowboy State Politics. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching, my friends. I really appreciate it. From justthenews.com, training exercise or police diversion. Evidence leads Congress to explore new January 6th pipe bomb theories. Now, this is one of the things that has always bugged me about January 6th. There was a lot of things happening that day, and one of them was a pair of pipe bombs that were found at the RNC and the Democrat headquarters. And that was the end of it. We heard, hey, there's pipe bombs at the DNC. And then we never heard anything else about it. And when the media goes silent, you always know that there's more to the story. But yet, when they are the people in power, it's pretty hard to come up with any evidence. And I mean, there's any number of examples we could use to validate that claim. But the truth is, when the media goes silent, there's more to the story. Here's what John Solomon's Just the News says, quote, evidence obtained by Congress in its quest, evidence, there's a T on there, evidence obtained by Congress in its quest to unravel the mysteries of January 6th has led to the panel discovering, leading the investigation to consider that the pipe bombs planted at both the Republican and Democrat national committees may have been part of an undisclosed training exercise, according to Chairman Barry Loudermilk. Additionally, new documents raise questions about how valuable cell phone location data from the days leading up to January 6th, key data that investigators needed for their work, was purged from an AT&T and government system despite a preservation order from the FBI. Chairman Loudermilk says the evidence from the FBI's pipe bomb analysis, AT&T's response to the data request, and a stunning coincidence are leading his panel to discover alternate theories about one of the most enduring mysteries of that day. That is, whatever happened to the pipe bombs? Why didn't they go off? There was so much chaos happening that day, and I think that, we can all admit that there was a lot of chaos happening. January 6th was a riot, not to the level of the Democrats' claim, but there was a lot of stuff going on. And I remember sitting there in my little apartment watching what happened on that day, just kind of shaking my head through the whole thing. But anyway, the pipe bombs came up, and then that was it. There was nothing else surrounding them. Well, Just the News reported on Monday that the pipe bomb analysis conducted by an FBI laboratory found the devices were filled with chemical building blocks of black powder. Each was equipped with a 60-minute kitchen timer, and each had destructive potential. However, neither device exploded, and they were discovered about 16 hours after the FBI claimed that they had been planted outside the party's headquarters. So, from the very outset, there's something is wrong here, because they only had a 60-minute timer, a kitchen timer. But the FBI says that they were planted 16 hours before. So either A, the bombs were never going to go off in the first place, or B, somebody else showed up a second time. And interestingly enough, that location data is now mysteriously corrupted and irretrievable, according to AT&T. Now, to Loudermilk, none of these details add up. Quote, I'm not buying the story anymore that they were there on the 5th, Loudermilk told Just the News. Quote, I believe they were put there on the 6th at this point. This is the theory that we're going on, especially since the lady that found them said there were still 20 minutes left on the timer when they were placed there. So it's an hour-long timer. There's 20 minutes left on them, and the FBI says that those things were put in place 16 hours before. You don't have to be a mathematician to figure out that those numbers don't add up. The other thing is, was there enough explosives in the device to actually cause a massive explosion? That's one of the things that we're looking at in these reports, which kind of leads us to believe that maybe there wasn't. But they definitely were explosives. So maybe not enough to make them go boom, to such a degree to cause any damage, but they were explosives. And you add on top of it that the timing is all screwed up. The FBI, or at least the people that found them, or somebody's not telling a straight story. Now, the documents included statements from Carlin Younger, a witness who discovered the pipe bomb and told the FBI that she was certain the bomb appeared in the alleyway near her apartment during the 40-minute period just after noon on January 6th. This conflicts with the FBI's account, which estimates, key word there, that the bombs were both planted at about 8:16 p.m. on the previous night. Okay, so if it's an hour-long timer and there's 20 minutes left on it, they were not. At least they were not turned on until 40 minutes before they were found. Loudermilk said that the current fact pattern and contradictions between witness statements and the FBI timeline all lead congressional investigators to consider alternative theories about the purpose of these pipe bombs. One of them, and this I find this fascinating, but one of those theories is that the pipe bomb was part of a law enforcement training exercise on the same day as the Capitol riot. Quote, now follow me on this. The series of logic here. When would you build a pipe bomb that's not designed to go off, but every element of it is to make you think it will, or make a bomb-sniffing dog think that it is a live bomb? Loudermilk asked. That's a training exercise. So that also opens the door to, was this possibly part of that training exercise? And you know, these are just theories because none of them can really be proven now, because later on in the piece, it tells you that the cell phone location data, which was stored by AT&T, mysteriously got corrupted. And the witness, Carlin Younger, guess who she works for? AT&T. Now, I don't believe in coincidences, my friends, and in politics, there are no coincidences. So in this case, it's definitely suspicious that an AT&T employee was one of the people that found a bomb that was never really designed to go off, that the FBI said was put there 16 hours early, but yet had 20 minutes left on the timer. You know, it's you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out that there's something, at the very least, there's something suspect about them. I thought from the very beginning that those were a diversionary tactic. And you add on top of it last week's revelation that the FBI had over 200 undercover operatives in the crowd of January 6th. 200, which means they knew it was happening. It wasn't just a spontaneous event that Trump ginned up. None of that is true. And so there are so many questions surrounding this. And then you add on top of it the January 6th Unselect Committee led by Cricket Cheney, which I'm glad that we in Wyoming got rid of her. Thank God for Harriet Hageman. But I think that we all deserve a little responsibility for electing her in the first place. Okay, so she's the daughter of Dick Cheney. That doesn't mean that she's a conservative or even a Republican. And I think her actions right during the Capitol Hill riot will tell you that, you know, she never really was a Republican. 7 minutes after that riot started, she was on Twitter blaming the president. 7 minutes. She didn't even know what was going on, and she was already, blaming Donald Trump for it. And I mean, that's the reason why she got censured in Wyoming. It doesn't have anything to do with our allegiance to Trump. A couple of the meetings that I was at for county GOP Central Committee meetings, it didn't really have anything to do with allegiance to Donald Trump or anything like that. It was that she did not afford Donald Trump the same constitutional rights that everybody else gets. That he didn't have a right to confront his accuser. He wasn't innocent until proven guilty. It was Liz Cheney right out in front, our representative, that was saying that he was responsible. That's why she got censored. Now, the reason why we threw her out or voted to not recognize her as our representative, our Republican representative, is she never showed up. For something like 1,000 days, she never contacted the GOP in Wyoming. That's why we did it. There's that really funny Saturday Night Live skit where they flat out, admit, nope, Wyoming said that you're not their GOP representative anymore. One of these days, I'll dig that back up and play it for you. I think it's wonderfully funny. Let's see here. Moving on. From the Blaze, a majority of Americans support deportations despite the negative media campaign. And let's just be honest, the mainstream media is doing backflips, trying to convince you that Americans just aren't in favor of deportations. Just from the outset and without reading any articles, of course, when I'm doing show prep, I read a heck of a lot, but just from the very outset, it doesn't make any sense that normal, everyday Americans would not be in favor of deportations. That just doesn't make any sense. Most people are totally in favor of the rule of law. And when we are, and that's one of the reasons why I led today's show with that we're living in a lawless society. And that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump got elected. That it doesn't matter what the law says, that if you are a member of a certain party, then you are evidently immune from prosecution. And I think that normal, everyday Americans just don't agree with it. I mean, we understand that there are consequences to actions, and that, you know, if you commit a crime, you deserve to be punished. And we're just sick to death of politicians getting away with whatever crime they commit. That's why the Becky Hadlock thing over in Weston County, why that's such a big deal. Because the governor let her off. Well, you know, it's she committed extreme disinterest, or whatever the term he used for it. She doesn't need to be removed. She committed a crime and then submitted false reports to the Secretary of State. And there has to be repercussions there. And now she's ignored a subpoena. So there have to be repercussions there. If there are not, then we don't live in a system of laws anymore. Rather, we have a system of men. And that's what it is. You know, it's you can look at any communist dictator. I'm not saying we live in a communist system. I'm using this as an example. That Lenin said, and Stalin too, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. I mean, that's what happened to Donald Trump. The left, you know, was apoplectic about having to keep Trump from being the president again. And so they conjured up all sorts of things that they prosecuted him for it. But it didn't have anything to do with discovering a crime and then trying to find the perpetrator. No. It was, there's the man, let's figure out the crime. We cannot be a nation of men, my friend. And right now, that's where we're at. There's a poll out from the New York Times, and I've got a really funny Chuck Schumer video to show you here in just a second. But the poll from the New York Times will likely anger some people on the left. And I quote, a new poll found that a majority of Americans continue to support deportation of illegal aliens, despite a campaign in the mainstream media to criticize enforcement. A Siena New York Times poll found that 54% of respondents supported deportation, while only 43% opposed it, for a net approval rating of 11%. Sanctuary cities knowingly release illegal alien public safety threats to the streets every day. That's where the problem is. Men overwhelmingly favor deportation, 65% to 33%, while far more women oppose the policy, 45% to 51%. White Americans also overwhelmingly favored deportation, 62 to 37. Black Americans opposed the policy by a margin of a negative 25%, and Hispanic Americans were mostly against deportation with a margin of 38%. As compared to previous results of the same poll before the election in 2024, support for deportations dropped slightly from 56% to 54%, while opposition to deportation increased from 37 to 43%. So it doesn't matter how you try to spin this poll. Most people are in favor of getting rid of illegal aliens. Not getting rid of, deporting them. Send them to another country. They came to ours illegally, so there's no reason to believe they want to be sent back home. Probably enough for Democrats. Let's see here. The Siena poll also found that Democrats will be slightly favored over Republicans on the generic ballot in the midterm election among registered voters. This shouldn't really surprise anyone. Typically, historically, the party in power loses seats during the midterm election. I don't think that's going to happen this time. I really think that Republicans are just going to increase their majorities, but not according to Chuck U. Schumer. Old Chucky Boy says that the New York Times is biased. It's absolutely true. Now, riddle me this, riddle me that, my friends. We already know that the New York Times is run by a bunch of Democrats, and they're entirely biased to the Democrat Party. So if they come out with the poll, and if they're biased, we know that the poll's biased, and it favors Republicans, is that also biased? Well, Chucky Schumer, that's exactly his question. Watch this. Funny.
Now, I know the leader is going to show a poll that says that Democrats will be blamed for the shutdown. There are many more polls that show Republicans are blamed. The question in that poll is biased. Biased. In the New York Times, but it's biased. If you turn the...
Listen to him laugh at him.
That's true. I don't always believe the New York Times. You can be sure of that. Neither do you. Okay.
They are doing backflips, trying to get themselves out of the situation that they've painted them in. It was a couple of days ago that I brought you the story that Chuck U. Schumer is only going along with the shutdown because he's terrified of his liberal base. He doesn't want AOC to run against him, which, I really hope that she does. I find her a constant source of comic relief. I'm tired of Chuck U. Schumer. I like you, buddy, but come on now. Your time has gone. Let's put somebody in there that will at least keep us laughing. But that's why he went along with the government shutdown. And, and just think about all the arguments that are being made. No. We're not providing health care to illegal aliens, which, they kind of are. And in fact, I've got a fact check here. Just let's see here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here it is. Okay, so fact check. U.S. taxpayers are funding health care for illegal aliens. Well, this is one of them. And if you couple these two together, right, the results of the poll that most Americans are absolutely in favor of deportations, and you add on top of it, the Democrats really do want to fund health care for those same illegal aliens. The Democrats are in a tailspin. Right now, they have been for a really long time since the 2024 election. But now, they are circling the drain, my friends. And the only reason why Chuck U. Schumer, and he knows, Chuck's been in politics long enough to know that they will be blamed for this shutdown. And, while they are playing checkers, the president has been playing chess. And that's why I started out this segment with that story, that there's going to be a lot of things that the president can do during the shutdown that Democrats, they probably didn't even see coming, because they are so ideologically driven to oppose Trump and to be in support of illegal immigration that, they honestly do have blinders on. Okay, so you can't be in the U.S. Senate a politician for as long as Chuck Schumer has and not have, some political chops to go along with it. There is no way that he didn't see all of this coming. And yet he has to bet, because he's worried about his seat or worried about a primary challenge, that this was going to backfire on them. And it absolutely is. We are going to be the beneficiaries of it, my friends. But the truth is, they are funding health care for illegal aliens. From The Blaze. Fact check, yes, U.S. taxpayers fund health care for illegal aliens. And I quote, Democrat lawmakers have rejected Republican attempts to keep the government open amid the shutdown, demanding an extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits, which are set to expire. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller slammed Democrats for refusing to support a clean, routine government funding bill because it doesn't give free health care to illegals. The approximately $66.4 billion in federal expenditures attributable to illegal aliens is staggering and constitutes an increase of 45% since 2017. Neera Tanden, a former domestic policy advisor under the Biden administration, accused Miller of pushing a total and complete fabrication. This is a lie. It's a violation of the law for the ACA premium tax credits to go to illegal aliens, she wrote on X. ACA's eligibility standards require an individual to be a U.S. citizen or a lawfully present non-citizen, which can include asylum seekers, refugees, and those granted employment authorization. The Biden administration relaxed criteria for various categories of immigration status, allowing more foreign nationals who were previously considered unlawfully present to qualify for status and may be eligible for the tax credits. Additionally, multiple studies have uncovered that federal tax dollars do reach illegal aliens through the healthcare system. The Congressional Budget Office found in October that the Biden administration had cost state and federal taxpayers $16.2 billion to cover Medicaid emergency services for illegal aliens since taking office. Paul Winfrey, president and CEO of the Economic Policy Innovation Center, told Fox News Digital in March that California has been, quote, exploiting an existing loophole within the law to use billions of dollars in reimbursements from the federal government to provide illegal immigrants with Medicaid. So Medicaid is health care funding. Let me repeat that. Medicaid is health care funding. A lot of the money that came from the Affordable Care Act, from the American Rescue Plan, and from the CARES Act went to expansions in Medicaid. Fortunately, Wyoming was smart enough to resist that. Not that they didn't try. Nancy Case, and oh man, do I have that soundbite? I was looking for it yesterday. Nancy Case is the number one guy trying to push Medicaid expansion, and every single time he did so, he said that money was available and that it wasn't going to cost Wyoming anything. Well, where did the money come from? Well, it came from the American Rescue Plan, and here we go. Listen to this. So this is Nancy Case, Senator Cale Case, who's a longtime politician in Wyoming. Here's what he said about Medicaid expansion. Tell me if this reminds you of anything.
This is a good deal for Wyoming. It could be a good deal. We can't even start to figure it out until we pass this bill.
Now you know why I call him Nancy Case. This is a good deal for Wyoming. It could be a good deal. We can't even figure it out until we pass the bill. So for a long time, Nancy has been pushing the Medicaid expansion and doing it under the auspices of the Medicaid funding. And all the time, he claimed that it wasn't going to cost the state anything. Okay, so where did the money come from? The Rescue Plan, the CARES Act, and under the Affordable Care Act. And because Medicaid expansion, by its very definition, expands Medicaid, and the Biden administration relaxed the qualifications, well, then illegal immigrants are being funded through Medicaid expansion. It is so black and white, my friends. And for the Democrats to try to think that you're too stupid to figure this out is even more shocking. But make no mistake, the Democrats do think that you're dumb. I mean, they absolutely do. That's why they constantly switch positions. Let's see here. Yeah, I can play this for you. So this was played on a loop outside Speaker Johnson's office. I played this video for you yesterday, but this is Democrats saying shutdowns are bad. Well, kind of a different tune than they're singing right now. But watch this.
It is not normal to shut down the government when we don't get what we want.
If the government shuts down, it will be average Americans who suffer most. A government shutdown means seniors who rely on Social Security could be thrown into chaos.
Families will be hurt. Farmers will be hurt.
It's the service members who will work without a paycheck. It's the firefighters who will be furloughed.
This shutdown, you know who's going to feel the pain?
God, look at the grin on her face.
You, everyday people, and the most vulnerable. Seniors, veterans, working families, hungry kids, y'all.
Democrats are signaling they're ready for a fight. This time, Schumer tells the Associated Press, quote, things have changed.
It is not normal to shut down the government when we don't get what we want.
But see, their tune has changed, my friends. And the reason why they're able to do this is the Democrats have a philosophy, in fact, the whole left does, that the ends justify the means. Now, this is completely opposite of the way conservatives look at things. To the Democrats, it doesn't matter what you have to do to get to the end goal. And in this case, it's expanding federal spending by, I think the number yesterday was $1.7 trillion. That's why they're shutting down the government, to restore funding to all these things that DOGE and the big, beautiful bill got rid of, the funding to USAID, NPR, and this money going to illegal immigrants via the healthcare system. And, you know, my friends, anytime, and if you want to know when a Democrat is lying, their lips are moving. And it really is because they think that you're stupid and that you're not going to catch on to this. Well, we'll continue with the program in just a minute. Whoops, I forgot that I moved my my soundbite thing here so we could listen to Nancy Case. All right, so now let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the program. I've got some Sydney Sweeney stuff. Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, Agent 29 is gone. Yeah, there's no reason why we shouldn't play. We'll be back in a minute.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. We're back here in the home studio. My producer, Agent 29, is off gallivanting around something about representing the people or something. I don't know. Actually, there was a great interview with him yesterday. What he's been doing while he's away. And one of those things is doging the Wyoming Department of Health. And he's taken a lot of flack for it. I imagine it's only going to get better. But even in Wyoming, there are so many duplicative programs that many of them, we don't even know that we're still funding. And the reason for that is how they budget. Oh, and by the way, the noise you hear in the background, that's my coffee pot. One of the advantages of being in the home studio is I have my coffee pot right here, so I don't have to get up and go to the green room. So, and I can't wait to get back to our main studio. But, hey, the work of the people is never done. Thank you for doing it, Ken. So he's doging the Department of Health, and here is one of the reasons why. I was looking for this before the break. But when we were talking about Medicaid expansion, of course, that doesn't have a prayer this session in the Wyoming legislature. But that won't keep them from trying. Nancy Case has tried to pass Medicaid expansion in Wyoming 17 times in different ways, new and inventive ways. When he realized that a bill would not go through, he tried it in budget amendments, in budget footnotes, and the guy is nothing if not creative, but we have to give him that. But this is from that piece I was telling you about before the break. Quote, Medicaid spending is supposed to be jointly financed by the federal government and the states. However, states are increasingly designing Medicaid money laundering schemes that result in massive federal expenditures without any state financial obligation. An Epic report claimed the state of California, colluding with insurance companies who cover Medicaid beneficiaries, has created one of the most outrageous ones yet, a money laundering scheme that results in California obtaining more than $19 billion in federal money without any state contribution over the period of April 23 through December of 2026. California's Department of Health Care Services claimed that Epic's report was misleading. Of course they did. The New York State Health previously announced that it would offer new health insurance option for undocumented immigrants over 65 beginning in last January. It noted that the coverage would provide a more comprehensive benefit package through Medicaid managed plans. Quote, the new insurance adds preventative and primary care benefits, including routine doctor visits, recommended screenings, lab tests, wellness services, prescription drugs, and supplies. A 2023 study from the Federation of American Immigration Reform found that $66.4 billion in federal expenditures on illegal aliens, including $23.1 billion in medical spending. So, yes, the Democrats are funding Medicaid and medical services for illegal aliens. The truth could not be any clearer, my friends. Yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance was in the White House briefing room, and he, that guy, every time that guy speaks, I would love to have him. Well, truth is, I would love to have the president too, but I'd love to have him on the program. He is one of the most articulate vice presidents that I think, since I've been alive. The guy is just incredible. But anyway, he was in the briefing room yesterday and debunked all of the left's lies on the government shutdown in response to a question from Matt Boyle of Breitbart News. This is from Breitbart, and I quote, Vice President J.D. Vance debunked the left's lies on the Democrat shutdown during a press briefing on Wednesday. Breitbart News' Washington bureau chief, Matt Boyle, asked the vice president to debunk two of the reigning lies currently touted by the left in the aftermath of the government shutdown. Quote, you're seeing a number of top Democrat leaders, from Kamala Harris and Chuck Schumer to Hakeem Jeffries, claim that it is a Republican shutdown caused by Trump. The second is that they're out there now claiming that they don't want to give health care to illegal immigrants. Can you please address both of these? Vance said that it was obvious that they are. I just explained to you how states are doing it with federal money. So, there's no getting out of this, except, the Democrats count on you being stupid. Well, here is what our amazing vice president had to say. Let's see here. Where is it? Oh, I'm in the wrong folder. See, Agent 29, you need to get your tail back here so you can do all this for me. Let's see here. Here's what J.D. Vance had to say. Check it out.
Questions?
Mr. Vice President.
That's a lot. Matt Boyle.
Okay. Mr. Vice President, there's two key Democrat lies I would like to get your take on and see if you can address. The first is that you're seeing a number of top Democrat leaders, from Kamala Harris and Chuck Schumer to Hakeem Jeffries, claim that it is a Republican shutdown caused by Trump. The second is that they're out there now claiming that they don't want to give health care to illegal aliens. Can you address both of those lies from the Democrat Party?
Yeah, so on the point that it's a Republican shutdown, look, it's obviously a Democratic shutdown. Just look at the vote totals in the House, look at the vote totals in the Senate, and look at the President of the United States' own action and conduct throughout this crisis. Nearly every single House Republican voted to open the government, Matt. Nearly every single Senate Republican voted to open the government last night, and even to their credit, a few moderate Democrats voted to open the government. That's not a Republican shutdown when nearly every single Senate Democrat votes to shut it down and every Republican voted to open it up. It's just obviously not true. Now, you can disagree about a number of things, but you can't disagree about the obvious fact that Republicans voted to open the government. The president stands ready to sign that opening of the government. We just need a few more Democrats to join us in that effort to open the government. Your final question about illegal alien benefits. Look, The text is very clear, and I even saw, I think it was George Stephanopoulos in an interview with Mike Johnson, did a fact check that was totally rooted in baseless claims. It was basically Democrat propaganda. If you look at the legislative text that they gave us, they tried to turn on two separate provisions that would give health care benefits to illegal aliens. Number one, if you're an American citizen, you've been to a hospital in the last few years, you probably noticed that wait times are especially large, and very often somebody who's there in the emergency room waiting is an illegal alien, very often a person who can't even speak English. Why do those people get health care benefits at hospitals paid for by American citizens? The answer is a decision made by the Biden administration that the Trump administration, working with congressional Republicans, undid. We turned off that money spigot to health care funding for illegal aliens. The Democrats, in their legislative text, want to turn it back on. That's one thing. The second thing, Matt, is we all know that there are various ways in which the Biden administration waved away illegal immigration status. They gave parolees, they gave asylum claims to people who were really claiming asylum. And when they waved the magic wand of amnesty, giving millions of people legal status even though they were in the country illegally, they also gave those people access to health care benefits. So what the Democrats are engaging in is a sleight of hand. They're saying, no. Those weren't illegal aliens who were getting health care benefits, even though everybody, knows they were in the country illegally. It's a lie told by the Democrats that they're not trying to give health care benefits to illegal aliens. It's a lie that is obviously untrue if you just look at the text that they gave us, and all you have to do is understand that this is about who benefits. We think the American people's government ought to benefit American citizens. The Democrats are willing to shut it down to benefit illegal aliens. The contrast couldn't be more.
It couldn't be more clear. Full stop. And it's exactly what I read to you just a minute ago. That the full text of what the Democrats want, is more money for health care for illegal aliens. I mean, it couldn't be any clearer. Medicaid expansion or more Medicaid funding for the states. The states have figured out a way to offer Medicaid medical funding to illegal immigrants. The Biden administration are the folks that relaxed all of those standards. So A plus B equals C, my friends. And I mean, there's just a couple of reasons why the Democrats are repeating this lie. The first one is they think you're stupid. They always do. That's why the video that I played of them saying shutdowns are bad, now shutdowns are good. They think that you are too ignorant, that you won't go back and check out what they said before, which is, I mean, that is a classic tactic of the left, my friends. They are counting on the low information voter that you won't go back and find out who these people are. That's the very reason why state legislatures some of them are increasingly turning purple. Now, ours has got a darker shade of red now, with conservatives controlling the House of Representatives. But the Senate is still run by a bunch of redcoats. It absolutely is. And if you're the person that's in charge of the Senate and you're allowing it to happen, you, Bo Beitman, are my friend, a redcoat. It is deeds, not words, my friends. And you can claim all day long that you're a conservative, but what you've allowed to happen in the Wyoming Senate is it is so close to a crime. There are so many things that went through the legislative session that are absolutely shocking. That, you killed bills that would have saved personal property rights, funding, you killed the supplemental budget. I mean, you name it. The list is long and killing election integrity measures. And here's the bizarre one, right? So they kill a bunch of bills that were sponsored by, sponsor's the wrong word, but they were put forth by the Secretary of State. Substantive changes, no ballot boxes, for example. Ballot harvesting was another one that they killed. And instead, the Senate puts forth its own bill that claims to address all of those things, but it has absolutely zero teeth. The reason they're doing that is so that they can make the claim during next year's election that they actually did do something on, election integrity. But there are so many places where, they are absolutely working against your best interest. But the left relies on you being a low information voter. And let's just be honest, all of us are so incredibly busy that, most of us don't have time to sit down at the computer and figure out where these people voted, before. That what is their actual voting record, which is why people like Eric Barlow think that they can run for governor. I mean, that guy has a 10-year history of voting with the Democrats 85% of the time. And yet during his campaign announcement speech, he stood up there and claimed to be a conservative. He's counting on your ignorance, counting that you won't go back and look at his record. And probably the worst part of his record is on pro-life legislation. When that guy is in power, when he's the chairman of a committee or when he was the Speaker of the House, he did his best to kill every pro-life bill that he possibly could. And the ones that he couldn't, and that he was going to be on the record for, yeah, he voted for them. And you need no more evidence than to look at the very first pro-life bill that he voted against. That was the heartbeat bill. Eric Barlow is not a conservative, and yet he is counting that you won't go back and look and see where he voted, that you will just believe the crap that comes out of his mouth. That I'm a conservative. I stand up for guns. Yeah, whatever. He's the most recent guy to write gun control into Wyoming law. But that's what all of these redcoats rely on, is that you're too busy to go check them out, that you won't do your research. And we've got to stop doing that, my friends. There's a reason why a lot of state legislatures are turning purple, and most of it is because of our inaction. That we allow these people to come to our doorstep and tell us, well, I don't believe in killing babies, and I think guns are great, and taxes are too high. I'm a conservative. You should vote for me. And then we do. They go down to Cheyenne or to any other state capital, and they vote exactly the opposite. And the worst part about it is, that's a big lie there. But the worst part of it is then they come home and get on our radio stations and they say things like, oh, we tried really hard, but we just didn't have the votes. We'll give it the old college try next time. That's the worst part of it, that they lie to you in the beginning, they do the opposite, and then they come back home and they count on you not paying attention because we're too darn worried, too darn busy running our own lives. And that's how these people stay in office. And so when you look at Chuck U. Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and AOC, and all of them are saying, oh, no, shutdowns are good now. We got to have a shutdown. We got to hold the line. They're counting on it, that you won't go back and watch the video. But that's where we come in. That's why Cowboy State Politics exists, to debunk all of that, to tell you the truth, and to tell you what's going on. Let's see here. So here's a great piece from Reason.com, and it's entitled, "Could This Be the Best Government Shutdown Ever?" I tend to think that it might be. So here we go again. Again, this is from Reason.com. As I write this, politicians are trying to gin up a new panic over a looming government shutdown. Obviously, this was written a couple of days ago. We've seen this before as Democrats and Republicans play chicken over their clashing of funding priorities, with a partial suspension of federal activities threatened if they can't come to a deal. But when spending isn't enough, the Democrats always side on spending more. That's why they want $1.7 trillion over, a couple of weeks. The latest clash over passing a funding bill for the federal government is Democrats' insistence that the legislation include extensions for Obamacare subsidies to address a problem that Paige Winfield Cunningham noted in the Washington Post that even supporters of the Affordable Care Act fight admit is a flaw with the original law. It wasn't generous enough, according to Democrats, to make plans affordable. So the Affordable Care Act was the one law that increased health care costs across the board. Now, Republicans aren't especially interested in keeping the flagship Democrat legislation afloat. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily thriftier. Having largely abandoned their small government credentials, with a few notable exceptions, the GOP wants to spend too much money, though less than the Democrats, on its own projects. Those projects place special emphasis on defense and Department of Homeland Security, with trillions of dollars in projected deficits for the foreseeable future. Republicans hold a majority, but Democrat votes are needed to move the funding bills in the Senate. So far, Democrats have refused to budge in what the Wall Street Journal described as, quote, a stark turnaround for a party that often lambasted Republicans as irresponsible for threatening shutdowns in the past. So it's the old switcheroo that I was talking about earlier. Now, that means that what we're getting, my friends, is a bit of kabuki theater, that it's all contrived, And make no mistake about it, Democrats and Republicans both spend tremendous amounts of money. Just because, our guys are in charge, that doesn't mean that they're not writing checks that we can't cash. Museums, national parks will close and federal offices will furlough. Although I saw a piece earlier today that said that national parks are going to stay open with a skeleton crew. So that's a little bit different. Furloughed workers who will be unavailable to give their usual bad tax advice or slowly process forms while most of the non-public facing work continues behind the scenes. The vast majority of the federal government is still in operation, shut down or no. Attorney Timothy Snowball, what a wonderful name, commented for the Pacific Legal Foundation in 2019 that, quote, even among the 8% of the federal budget that is not currently funded because of the shutdown, only non-essential programs and employees will be affected. For essential employees, it's business as usual. They just continue to get paid. So that's what I said in the beginning of today's show, that the federal government doesn't really ever shut down. Federal employees are, after all, better compensated than their private sector counterparts. According to a 2024 Congressional Budget Office analysis, the federal government would have decreased its spending on total compensation by 5% if it had adjusted the cost of pay for its employees to match the compensation of their private sector counterparts. Even so, federal workers will inevitably cry poverty for interviewers while they're furloughed and not drawing pay, even though they'll automatically get all of that back pay once they return to work. So it's not like we're saving money here. But what it will allow the president to do is eliminate all of these positions that are, quote unquote, non-essential. It's something that we should absolutely do. The role of the government is really pretty small. To only handle those things that are enumerated to it. And it boils down to really simple stuff like, infrastructure. I like to have really nice roads to ride on. Sanitation, public services, water, sewer, those sorts of things. Law enforcement, got to have that. I don't like my house being robbed, though it would be a really stupid criminal to try to break into my house. And then fire protection. That's your local government, right? And you got to have some administration of all of that. But really, all of these other things, education and medical stuff and, all of these other programs, NPR and USAID and all of that crap is way, way outside of the scope of government. But this shutdown might be a little bit different. The White House is telling federal agencies to prepare large-scale firings of workers if the government shuts down, which it did. So we're going to assume that that's going down. The Guardian reported last week, quote, in a memo released on Wednesday night, the Office of Management and Budget said agencies should consider a reduction in force for federal programs whose funding would lapse next week. It is not otherwise funded and is not consistent with the president's priorities. So in other words, all of those programs that are duplicative, are non-essential, are outside of the role of government, though make no mistake about it, most of the Republicans are not going to, are not really the conservatives that they claim to be. It's a common joke in Wyoming. The most dangerous place in the world is between John Barrasso and a video camera. The guy has voted, with his political counterparts more times than I can count, though he still comes back and claims to be a conservative, which, I suppose if you were to compare him to most of his colleagues in the Senate, John Barrasso is probably a fairly conservative guy, though, he's nowhere near what I would want him to be. The aforementioned OMB memo points out that with respect, quoting now, with respect to those federal programs whose funding would lapse and which are otherwise unfunded, such programs are no longer statutorily required to be carried out, which is why the president can do away with them. And he should do that with, post haste. But the rest of this piece, and I encourage you to go read it. It's on reason.com. But it explains how this might be a little bit different, where we actually may be able to reduce the size and the scope of government through this shutdown. All the other shutdowns, really, nothing really happened. And in the end, Republicans capitulated with what the Democrats wanted. And the size of government just never decreased. And it's why that most of us think that it doesn't matter who we elect to Congress, that it's pretty much business as usual. This time might be different. Hopefully it is, though, I'm not super optimistic. Remember this video. This one, it drove Agent 29 batty, but I absolutely love it. Who could forget this?
I'm not here to tell you to buy American Eagle jeans. And I definitely won't say that they're the most comfortable jeans I've ever worn. Or that they make your butt look amazing. Why would I need to do that? But if you said that you want to buy the jeans, I'm not going to stop you. But just so we're clear, this is not me telling you to buy American Eagle jeans.
Sydney Sweeney, Hasbro jeans.
You see what I did there, right?
So remember the firestorm that was created when that ad came out? The left absolutely lost their ever-loving mind. And there's a big reason why. It's because American Eagle did not bow to the liberal dogma that you have to have all this inclusivity, that you have to believe whatever the left says. And there's a good reason why they're mad. And it all boils down to envy. And we're going to take our third break. And when we come back, I'm going to explain to you why the left is so ticked off, why you see them just absolutely blowing a gasket because of, it's not just American Eagle. That's representative of what they hate. And think about this, right? That it's a hot girl in a hot pair of jeans making you want to buy them. And it is classic advertising that Sydney Sweeney looks good in jeans. So if you buy them, you'll look hot like Sydney Sweeney too. But the left doesn't like it because it's a return to normalcy. You see, most of us like things that are normal. And what the left is advocating for, well, my friends, that is the furthest thing from normal. So when we come back, I'm going to explain to you exactly why the left is losing their mind. And we're going to have a lot of gratuitous Sydney Sweeney. We'll do that when we return. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. I'll be back. Everybody say, now it's gone away. Rocks now dead, nothing left today. No one gets today. We got to face the truth, now it's far away. Tell me what you want, here's what you got. You've been every day more than we have ever seen. Rocks now dead, don't ask why. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out.
State politics is only going to get stronger. This program is expanding at a rate that nobody could have predicted. With over 500,000 views on Facebook alone, the Cowboy State Politics live show every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Mountain. And of course, do not forget about the podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, everywhere that you get your podcast. Thank you for watching the program, my friends. I couldn't do what I do without you. And thank you very much to the big guy upstairs. Every single one of us should thank God for the gifts that we're given, and mine happens to be doing this show for you each and every day. So thank you for watching. From the New York Post, defiant American Eagle CEO hits back at the woke mob outrage over the Sydney Sweeney ad as company boasts 1 million new customers. And I quote, the CEO of American Eagle resisted pressure on social media to pull its provocative ad campaign featuring Sydney Sweeney. That would be the dumbest thing they could ever do. She's hot. Telling his charges to remain calm in the face of accusations that the brand was promoting racist and sexist tropes, according to a report. In the weeks that followed, the campaign proved to be a hit, bringing in almost 1 million new customers to American Eagle between July and September. I have not purchased a pair of American Eagle jeans, though I have almost been persuaded, and perhaps after this segment, I may have to, just because their ads are freaking awesome. Demand spiked for the featured items. The Sydney clinched waist denim jacket sold out in a day, and the Sydney jean sold out in a week. The company's stock surged, and sales of its clothing rose. Quote, you can't run from fear, the teens retailer Jay Schottenstein told the Wall Street Journal. We stand behind what we did. Sweeney, the actress who starred in the TV hit series Euphoria and The White Lotus, was showcased in American Eagle ads wearing the company's signature denim line. Sydney Sweeney has great jeans. I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think we need some more Sydney Sweeney. It's just, I love this ad campaign, my friends. Listen,
genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has very keen.
Absolutely. Yes, she does. Obviously, I would like to meet her dad. But the big question is, why is the left so incredibly apoplectic about this? Well, it's the answer to that is actually pretty simple, that it's normal. And the one thing that the left can't stand is that a rejection of their ideas. You see, liberal ideas only work in academia, in the cloistered environment of the university, when you're surrounded by your peers and you're coming up with all sorts of crazy ideas, how there could be 87 genders or whatever the number is now. And then the left, when they gain power, try to push those ideas on everybody else. And the entire push for inclusivity it all boils down to envy and greed. That average Americans, they know for a fact that the Sydney Sweeney ad is a return to normalcy. That is a rejection of everything that the left has tried to push on us for the last 6-8 years. The folks that are attractive are obese. I remember months ago I brought you the story of the statue that was put up in Times Square of the heavy set African American woman. It had nothing to do with it being a statue of an African American woman. It had everything to do with that not being attractive. And, call it toxic masculinity if you want, but I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Most Americans reject that. We realize that sex sells, and every single person on the face of the planet knows that, even the left. But the reason why they're so irritated is they can't convince you that you are not towing their line. You're not the one that's going to say that there are all these different genders, and that just because we refuse to call a man a woman when they're actually a woman, or when they're actually a man, see, even I'm confused, is a rejection of their belief that they have to be included in everything. And it's why a lot of the advocates of this are not attractive at all, because they're not normal, my friends. And we just got to call a spade here. The truth is that Sydney Sweeney, those ads are popular because they're a return to normalcy. Let me give you another one. This one is by far, I think, well, I don't know. It's a lot of competition there, but this one is a good one too. Check this out.
Sydney Sweeney, Hasbro Keynes. Sydney Sweeney, Hasbro Keynes.
Hot girls, hot cars, that's what sells, my friends. And the left can't stand it. Now, there was a great piece, and it's actually a video, but it was a discussion of this whole thing, why the left is so crazy about Sydney Sweeney. And it boils down to they're pissed because they can't convince you that what they want you to believe is actually normal, and every tradition, every thing that we know about being an American, that we should reject that. They're ticked because they can't convince you that that's true. And when you have a major jean company like American Eagle say, no, we're done with all this crap. We want to sell some jeans. They put a hot girl with a hot car in some hot jeans. And that's why they're irritated, because they believe what they're saying. They are really true believers that there are 87 genders. And I mean, I don't know how you convince yourself of that, but they are true believers. And what irritates them the most is that you don't believe it. Now, there was I found this piece by Kira Davis, and it's a little bit long, but I love it. Let's go ahead and listen to it. This is great.
The latest ad for American Eagle blue jeans caused extreme distress among the very online crowd. It's a pretty basic ad. Current Hollywood it girl Sydney Sweeney poses provocatively next to a classic Mustang, wearing classic jeans and a classic white shirt. The narrator tells us Sydney Sweeney has great jeans. The outrage seems twofold. First, the usual suspects are screaming accusations of racism at the idea of a white, blonde, blue-haired starlet declaring the superiority of her jeans. Shades of eugenics, according to
Okay, all right. Hold on. We got to stop right there.
Offended.
There we go. Okay, so the folks that she's pointing out, the ones that were, and those two, I guess you'd call them social media influencers, whatever. I don't know. I'm never influenced by them, of course. I'm me, and so I'm not influenced by ridiculous non-arguments. But the people, and just look at the pictures of the people that are, objecting to this. Clearly outside of the mainstream of American life, clearly outside of our definition of what attractive is and is not. And, I don't know if those people were, claimed to be one of the other 200 genders or whatever it is. But not in the mainstream of what we would consider attractive or not. And, if you talk to, just about every any day American, I would say the majority of them, because, I suppose those people on the fringes probably wouldn't believe that. But if you talk to any of them, they're going to look at that Sydney Sweeney ad and say, yep, that's a hot girl in a hot pair of jeans. It's not toxic masculinity. It's not any of this, belief in the leftist, belief in the leftist ideology. It is a return to normalcy. And that's the one thing that they can't stand. And here's why. Because if they can convince you of all of these things that are not true, that men can become women, the women can become giraffes or trout or whatever, then they can convince you of anything. And the liberal ideology means that the only way that that their policies work and the only way that they'll function in the American system is through force, which is by definition not part of the American system. And that is what irritates the crap out of them. Let's go ahead and continue with Kira Davis here.
To a lesser extent, but still very obvious to those of us who have been observing the culture wars of the last 30 years, the left seems upset at the very notion of an attractive young woman being used to sell clothing. American Eagle's deliberate bucking of the body positive trend thrust upon us by the human resources cult utterly infuriates certain unstable members of our eclectic society. Some people blame all their failures in life on the fact that someone else is smarter, cuter, or richer. It's envy, of course, and it undergirds every ridiculous complaint about the new American Eagle campaign. But I believe the overheated uproar over Sweeney's ad is more than just racism or envy. It's about Donald Trump. Or more precisely, about the sharp right turn the American people took last November. We are witnessing the desperate tantrums of a progressive left that is struggling to accept the verdict of the electorate. The leftists must face a sudden reality. They were never the majority at all, and they are not stronger than the American spirit.
There you have it. That they are not the majority and that they are not stronger than the American spirit. Now, just think about this. Think about the class warfare, Zora and Mamdani in New York. One of the main reason, the main driver behind socialism and communism is greed and envy. That is, somebody else is more attractive. Somebody else is more successful. Somebody else is better at your job than you. And because you don't believe in the ideas of the free marketplace and hard work, you reject the idea that that person is more successful and thus makes more money than you. And so the only conclusion that you can draw is that, well, it's not fair. Well, life is not fair, and the truth is not everybody is created equal. Now, this is anathema to the left in their thinking that everybody should be able to do whatever they want and be entitled to however much money that they can make, or success or popularity, or you can fill in the blank there. But the idea that the world is inherently unfair and that the free market operates is incongruous to the ideas of the American, and it's not just the American, but we'll just say the American radical left. I mean, it's absolutely worldwide, which is why you see countries, arresting people for Facebook posts. That how dare you denigrate somebody? How dare you say something that is unpopular? How dare you say something that is mean? Well, the truth is because they don't believe in the free market. They believe that they don't believe in the ideas of hard work and being successful because you put that work in. They think that everybody ought to be entitled to that. And the only way that that works is through force. And that is what the American left. Now, before Donald Trump, they were able to force that through what I would refer to as soft power, through the media, through them being able to influence you. That's what this whole social media influencer thing is about, to convince you of things that are not true. And I mean, you can get on the internet and there are some things that, wow, I can't believe people believe them, but they do. And a lot of it is and almost all of it is being pushed by the radical left. And it is being driven by greed and their rejection of this idea that the free market works and that some people are just inherently better looking, that some people are better at their job, that some people are better at podcasting than others, or at digging dishes or welding pipe or being a plumber. And all of it, and I think Akira Davis is right on, that a lot of this boils down to Donald Trump, that the left is pissed because this country took a hard right turn. They fundamentally rejected the ideas of the radical left. And those ideas are that, we should all be equal. And it makes me think of did you ever watch that movie, that I Want Your Money? It's great. I should go back and grab that little video. But there's a scene where there's a classroom and it's Ronald Reagan teaching the class, and all the people in the class are Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is in there. And Ronald Reagan says, let's do a little experiment. After Bill and Hillary say, well, we should just average the grades. And Ronald Reagan says, okay, let's run an experiment. Well, the first test, it pretty much has results kind of like it. Now, the people that worked really hard, the average grade in the class was a B. That's because the people who work hard and that want to excel still worked hard. And the people that didn't work at all, well, they didn't do anything anyway because you're going to average the grade. So the average grade went down. When the second test came along, the average grade was a C, because the people who generally worked hard didn't work hard enough because, they're not going to get any recognition for their hard work. So they worked less. The people that didn't really work at all, they worked less. They didn't even do anything. And so the average grade was brought down to a C. Now, when the third test came along and we're still averaging grades, the average grade was an F, because the people that worked really hard saw no reason, there was no benefit in what they were doing, and so they didn't work at all, and neither did the people on the other end who never worked anyway. You see, socialism, communism, all of those ideas of class envy and class warfare always result in mediocrity. Socialism, every single time that it has been tried, in every single place that it has been tried, has resulted in poverty and death. And that's why, and you hear this all the time. Well, they didn't do it right. Right? We have democratic socialism now. We'll do it the right way. You see, those guys that came before us, they didn't have the right formula. That we, on the other hand, we've got it. And when you extrapolate that out to elections, New York City is going to get exactly what they deserve. Zoran Mamdani is most likely going to be unless there's a miracle, and I'm praying to God that this happens, but if he gets elected, he will destroy New York City. He is a radical communist, and he's an admitted one, and there's no reason to assume that he won't enact all of his policies. But the ideas of the left will bankrupt you, they will bankrupt the culture, and they will bankrupt the country because they are all based on greed. And that's why the Sydney Sweeney ad infuriates them so much, because it is a return to normalcy, a return to the things that most Americans think are great, right? I think, a hot girl in a hot car in a hot pair of jeans is awesome. Now, there was a great example. I played this video yesterday, but I'm going to play it for you again. It's Dana White, the president of UFC, talking to the constantly broadcasting socialism network on their program 60 Minutes. And that moron asked him about toxic masculinity. Here was his response.
You don't think there's this cultural movement? It's a lot of guys, call it the manosphere, you're one of the leaders.
You talk about knowing your fan base and knowing who they are.
Who are they?
18 to 34-year-old males and growing, global. We are definitely unapologetically masculine.
Can this bubble over to too much? When you hear toxic masculinity.
What's that mean?
You tell me.
No, you just said it. What's the definition of toxic? How can somebody be too masculine? Is that a possibility? Can you be too masculine?
You tell me.
No.
You think so?
The answer is hell no.
Exactly right. The answer is an unapologetic heck no. And the American culture, that when you get down to it, all this idea of toxic masculinity and all the bull crap that he was spouting, none of us see that as normal. In fact, I guarantee you that even the guys who are, in the marriage where the wife wears the pants, even those guys, when they walk by somebody like Sydney Sweeney, are like, even they do it. And the truth is that infuriates the left because they are unable to fundamentally alter the American culture. That is hard work, free enterprise, success, hot girls, hot cars, hot jeans, my friends. It's all envy and greed, and the sooner they realize that, the better. But there are some cities that aren't realizing that. Here's a piece from the Daily Caller. Philadelphia raises Chinese Communist flag. Again, it's a city run by a bunch of radical Democrats who think that they can push this idea on you. And because they're in power, and there was a great example of this in Wyoming. I can't remember, maybe it was in Casper. I think it was, Mills maybe. Well, the mayor of the town put out all these pride flags all around City Hall. And one of her constituents decided that if she can put pride flags out, and this was pretty controversial, I don't know if I would have gone this far, but he got his point across. He decided to draw swastikas on the sidewalk outside. You see, if we can have a pride flag, he can draw a swastika. Now, again, I don't subscribe to that, but his point was that's just as offensive as the pride flag. Well, in the end, the mayor removed all of the pride flags from out in front. They were lining the sidewalk. And instead, she put up this pride flag in her office. And of course, the guy with the swastikas, his point was, you don't get to push your liberal ideology on me just because you were elected. But there are so many liberals that get elected to office, and many of them are even Republicans. The drag show Clark Stith, when I caught him donating to his local drag show. And of course, he tried to back. Oh, no, I didn't know what the donation was. Bull crap. Caught him red-handed. And by the way, he was too big of a coward to come on this show. He tried to when I offered him a spot on the show, he tried to put conditions on it. Try to say, well, it can only be used on the show and you can't use any of the sound. Shut up. If you're too big of a coward to come on the show, then don't. I've still got the email somewhere from him. I mean, but that's who these people are. They think that they can get elected and then push their liberal ideology on you. But when you push back, first, they try to demonize you. And second, they'll try to prosecute you. They'll try to do everything they can, inside and outside their scope of power. Well, here's an example in Philadelphia. They raised the Chinese Communist flag. Quote, the ceremony marked the CCP's October 1st National Day and involved a co-organizer with ties to Beijing's regime, according to the Epoch Times. The event reportedly whitewashes a violent legacy of mass killings, religious crackdowns, and cultural destruction that began with Mao Zedong when he seized power in 1949. Outside the event, protesters from the Tibetan Association of Philadelphia demanded the city take down the banner. Quote, the red flag of the Chinese Communist Party is not a symbol of culture. It is an emblem of a brutal totalitarian regime, president of the local association told the Epoch Times. This regime is responsible for the persecution and murder of millions and the destruction of thousands of monasteries and the ongoing cultural genocide of my people in Tibet, the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. To fly their flag here in our Philadelphia City Hall is to legitimize terror and betray the dissidents who seek freedom. A woman, a Campaign for Uyghurs also denounced the event in the form of a letter to Mayor Sherelle Parker, the outlet reported. Its founder, Rushan Abbas, whose sister, Gulshan Abbas, was sentenced to 20 years in a Chinese prison, said the flag represents mass surveillance, forced sterilizations, and the silencing of dissidents across China. Elected officials at both the state and federal level blasted the city for hosting the event. Republican Pennsylvania State Senator Doug Mastriano said that the decision was a terrible mistake, pointing to the CCP's decade-long record of persecution and the deaths of millions during the Cultural Revolution. Let's see here. Republican Michigan Representative John Moulinaire, who chairs the House Select Committee on the CCP, also urged the mayor to reverse the decision, saying it's a disgrace to the values enshrined in the Constitution. The Daily Caller News Foundation investigation found that the CCP's reach extends beyond symbolic flag raisings, with party members enrolled at U.S. universities, setting up overseas party branches, backing their Chinese alma maters. These branches, unregistered as official student groups, have appeared at Oklahoma State, Nebraska, Lincoln, at the University of Colorado at Denver, and in other places. So in Philadelphia, the mayor thinks that she can raise a Chinese flag and that nobody's going to have a problem with it. Well, yeah, there's a lot of people that have a problem with it because, mayors, you're not supposed to push your CCP-linked communist propaganda down our throat. This is America. As the president of Argentina would say, long live freedom, damn it. All right, from The View, they are baffled at Pete Hegseth's speech that he gave on Tuesday. In fact, The View host can't deduce why military leaders might not need to be in top physical shape. To me, this sounds, just common sense. Why would you not want your military to be in tip-top fighting order? Their one job is to fight and win wars. But the problem is that the Biden administration and the radical left see the military as a captive environment to conduct their social experiments, which is what they've been doing. All the diversity, DEI, inclusion crap, having leaders that are openly trans, videos of recruiting videos from the Navy that featured so-called trans people. Well, the hosts of The View appeared baffled as to why the leaders of the United States military might need to be in peak physical condition and spent much of Tuesday's broadcast complaining that the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, was demanding physical fitness from his troops. The co-hosts were responding to the unprecedented meeting held in Quantico on Tuesday. I addressed this yesterday. There are some things that you just have to have an in-person meeting. The Zoom meeting will not do it. If you got something you got to tell your group, the people that are under you, have them show up to a meeting. If they don't like it, you're going to see it, and you'll identify exactly who you need to get rid of. Complaining that Hegseth's remarks described, quote, a very retro vision of our armed forces, co-host Joy Behar demanded to know why Hegseth was obsessed with fat. That's a direct quote. because if you're fat, you're probably not a good soldier. And if you're a general and you're fat, you're probably not a good leader. Well, here is what they had to say on The View. Take a look at this. Let's see here. Where is it? Here we go. Check this out.
I'm actually really befuddled by why he did that. The optics were terrible, meaning all of our top military brass are all in one place, and we spent $6 million to get them there. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. It also didn't make a lot of sense to me that he was saying that he was going to toughen physical standards and review the anti-hazing policy by sort of implementing a hazing policy. And then also he said he was going to return to the highest male standard for combat positions because the troops were fat. I don't understand how that was supposed to be an uplifting message for our military.
Maybe he's referring to Colonel Sanders.
It was really a bizarre thing. He started talking about.
It's a bizarre thing for the Secretary of War to say that his troops shouldn't be fat. What is bizarre about that statement is you think that they shouldn't be, that he shouldn't be worried about that. The truth is that our military exists for one purpose, to fight and win wars, period. It is not a social experimentation zone, and who really cares if the generals didn't like it? He's the Secretary of War. It was a meeting to tell them what the policy going forward is, and who really gives a crap if they like it or not. Their job is to follow orders, to fight and win wars, period, period, period. End of sentence. But the reason why the women on The View, notice I didn't call them ladies, the women on The View have a hard time with this, is they're fully engaged in this cultural experimentation in our military, DEI, and all of it. That yes, we should be inclusive. Now, the standards thing, this is one that again, there's a lot of things about the left that most people don't understand, but the easiest one is, why should we have standards that are one? That just one standard, that's what it is, take it or leave it. Well, because they believe that everybody should be included in our military. Everybody should be able to join and fight for our country. Well, not everybody deserves to be on the front lines. And if you're a woman and you can't pass the physical standards, then you don't need to be in combat. I mean, it's easy. War doesn't care what gender you are or if you're black or white or Hispanic. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters to the enemy is whether you're alive or dead. That's it. And we shouldn't have artificial standards in place that, dilute our military force, that dilute our military power. And really, one of the biggest reason why the left doesn't understand this is they are totally in the tank for all of this social experimentation, that everything has to be inclusive. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that they fundamentally don't believe that some people are more talented than others, that some people are better at their job than others, that they're more physically fit, that they are, that they're more successful, they're going to make more money. That is absolutely contradictory to everything that is the modern American left. Well, we burned up another busy broadcast hour on the program. We've got Open Line Friday tomorrow. I haven't taken any phone calls all week. It's not that I've been ignoring you. I've been rolling on with the program, and I shouldn't be forgetting my loyal audience, but we'll do Open Line Friday tomorrow. Make sure that you don't miss a minute of Cowboy State Politics Live. It begins every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. until 10. Don't forget about the podcast either. Yesterday's was a barn burner. Go check it out. If you want to know what was happening with Becky Hadlock, take you all the way through it. That woman just needs to stop lying. It would be better for her. But that's what liberal politicians do. They lie. Well, that'll do it for today's installment of the program. Have a good rest of your afternoon, and we'll talk again tomorrow from the base of the Bighorns. I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you later, my friends.